Nell Abrams took the dare at a diner counter, 10:30 on a moonless Thursday, with 3 friends and a plate of cold fries between them. Drive 16-mile cut end to end, alone, no stopping at the fork. She said yes before they had finished asking, because she had never once been the one who said no. That was mile 1, and she was still smiling. The cut is not a road so much as a cut, a seam of packed dirt somebody opened through the pines 100 years ago and nobody ever closed. Her headlights went out ahead of her like a thin rope thrown down a well. On both sides the trees stood shoulder to shoulder, close enough to brush the mirrors. 16 miles. She had driven further than that for less. By the 3rd mile the smiling had stopped without her deciding to stop it. She kept doing the small arithmetic that frightened drivers do and will not admit to, counting minutes, counting fuel, counting the miles still owed. There were no houses out there, no mailboxes, no gates, no gap in the trees where a house had ever stood. The wind moved through the pines above her in a long, dragging sound. And it did not sound like wind. It sounded like a room full of people agreeing about something quietly. The road bent and bent again, and every bend showed her exactly what the last one had shown her. Dirt, trees, and the end of her own light. Everyone in her town knew a version of the story, and none of the versions matched. A hunter's truck found, nose down in the ditch, with both doors open and the keys still in it. A girl from 2 counties over, whose family stopped saying her name out loud. Nell had always liked those stories. She had never once liked them from the inside. She told herself the thing everybody tells themselves out there, that it was only trees, that a road is only a road, and this one had a reputation for no better reason than being long and dark and driven too fast. The odometer turned over again. 6 miles down, 10 still to go. Then the radio came on. She had not touched it since the diner, had not touched it at all, and it rose up out of the silence at half volume with a sound like fire in wet paper. The little display lit the edge of her hand. It was sitting on a number that is not a station out there, and it was not playing music. She looked at it the way you look at a dog that has started growling at an empty doorway. Her hand went out and stopped halfway there. Under the static, there was a shape to the sound, a rise and a fall, the exact rhythm of somebody speaking who is standing well back from the microphone. It was saying something. She did not want to know what. The static thinned the way fog thins, and a voice came through it, low and wet and patient. It said one word with the shape of her name inside it. Then it was static again, and the display stuttered, and the volume climbed a single notch entirely on its own. So Nell did the one thing she had always been good at. She put both hands on the wheel, set her jaw, and pushed her foot down, because fear had always been something she could outrun if she simply went faster than it. 40, 50. The trunks began coming past like fence posts. The dirt banged up under the car, and the light shook out ahead of her across mud and roots and the pale undersides of leaves. She was making time now. She could feel the miles coming off. What she could not feel was the road getting any nearer to ending. Things started moving at the edges of the beam. Not animals, shapes that stood the wrong way and were gone when she turned her head. Tall, thin absences between the trunks, keeping pace with a car doing 50. She told herself it was her eyes. She had been staring into one bright line in the dark for 40 minutes, and eyes invent things. The road gathered itself into a hard left, tighter than anything before it, banked and rutted and blind. She braked into it, and the headlights swung across the trees, dragging their shadows around like the hands of a clock. And then the light came back around onto the road ahead of her. Her foot came off everything. Both hands went cold on the wheel at once, the way cold arrives when it is coming from the inside. There was somebody standing in the middle of her lane, standing in it, not crossing it, the way a person stands when they have been waiting a long while and knew exactly which way you would come. A girl, perhaps 9 years old, barefoot in a grey dress in the middle of a dirt road, 16 miles from the nearest lit window. Her hair hung in long, wet ropes across her face, wet, on a night with no rain, in a summer that had not given any. The headlights went through her at the edges, and behind her, the road lay clean, with no shadow thrown onto it at all. Nell stopped the car 8 feet short of her. The girl did not shield her eyes from the beam, did not squint, did not move at all. Where her eyes belonged, there were 2 places where the face simply went in and kept going. Everybody knows the story of the girl on the road who wants a ride. Nobody in that story ever asks her where she wants to be taken. And Nell, because she was kind, and because kindness is the very last thing to leave, wound her window down 2 inches and said it. "Are you okay?" The girl's mouth opened. It kept opening. It went on opening well past the point where a jaw is supposed to stop. What had been a child came apart upward. The arms drew out long and thin as fence wire. The legs rose under it, the way a spider stands itself off wet ground. And the whole pale shape went up until the headlights could only reach it from the waist down. It had come into her light wearing something small so that she would stop. Nell did not scream. There is a place beyond screaming where all you can do is breathe, fast and shallow and useless, and she went straight there. Her hand found the gear stick, her foot found the floor. The car came around the standing thing with 2 wheels tearing at the ditch. Mud came up over the bonnet. The trees went past fast enough to blur into one continuous wall. She did not look in the mirror, because there is a sort of knowledge you can still refuse if you are quick about it, and she was being very quick. The radio was still going. It had not stopped once. She reached across without taking her eyes off the road and turned the volume down, and nothing changed. She wound it all the way to 0, and the static came out of the speakers at exactly the same weight. Underneath it, the voice again. Closer now, much nearer the microphone than it had been. Ahead of her the road ran on, empty and straight and perfectly ordinary, showing her nothing whatsoever. That was the worst of it. Whatever had stood in her lane was not behind her and was not in front of her. It was simply somewhere. And the road had about half a minute left of being harmless. Then it came down onto the glass. 2 long hands slapped flat across the windscreen, fingers reaching past the wipers, and the whole cabin went dark under the weight of a body dropped in between her and the beam. The glass did not break, it bowed. She screamed then, at last, and held the wheel straight, because some part of her still believed that arriving somewhere would fix this. Through the gaps between the fingers, she could see her own light running on ahead without her. Then the weight lifted. The hands were gone. The road came back. The odometer said 15. She said it out loud to the empty car, over and over, the way people pray when they have forgotten the words. 1 more mile, and it's over, and I am never coming back here. Behind her, the back seat took her voice and kept hold of it. The radio crackled again, and she hit the power button with her thumb, hard, 3 times, 4. The display stayed lit. "Stupid thing," she said. "Why will you not turn off?" And she said it in an ordinary, irritated voice, because ordinary irritation was the only shelter she had left. The static answered her. It answered in words. It said her name plainly, from behind her, and it did not come out of the speakers. Nell turned her head, folded into the back seat with its knees up past the roof lining, filling everything behind her. The thing had been sitting there for some part of those 16 miles. It had simply waited until she was almost out. Nothing after that. No brake lights thrown up onto the trees, no horn, no scream that anybody heard, because there was nobody inside 16 miles to hear one. The cut just went quiet again, the way it had been quiet for 100 years. They found the car 9 days later, 90 yards off the road, driver's door standing open and the keys still in it. Half a tank of fuel, not one mark on the windscreen. The radio was on, tuned to a number that is not a station. And Nell Abrams was not inside it, and was never inside anything again. So tell me down in the comments, and be honest about it. When the girl in the grey dress was standing in your lane, would you have stopped for her, or would you have gone around without slowing? And have you ever talked yourself out of something you should have run from, and told yourself afterwards that it was only trees? If you have stayed with me all the way to this end of the road, then subscribe, and come sit with the rest of us who are still awake at this hour. Turn the notifications on so that the next one finds you before you go looking for it. I will be back with another. Sleep well, if you can.